Hello and welcome to the Operators Association podcast. This is Greg, your athletic director. Today is part 2 in my 6-part Hero's Journey podcast series. So last week I talked about my childhood, going through college, just my decision to join the Navy, all of that up through the point of going to Officer Candidate School or OCS. Today I'm going to talk about going from graduation of OCS, checking in the buds, and first phase of buds up until the start of Hell Week. So I graduated OCS, which is out in Newport, Rhode Island, and I had about 9 days to drive out to San Diego. So whenever you PCS in the military, PCS means permanent change of station. So in layman's terms, when you move from one place to another. In the military, when you are transferred from one command to another, or one duty station to another. A PCS is when the Navy or the military in general pays you to move. So you can do that one of two ways. You can drive or you can fly. And I won't get into full details on PCS moving. This isn't a big military podcast, but in general, it's pretty much always better to say you're going to drive. Even if you are going to fly, you can, because one, you're going to get more time to get out there. It's based on mileage, but if I'm moving from Rhode Island to San Diego, that's a very large mileage move, right? It's from the complete northeast coast to the southwestern coast of the country. So you're going to get more time to go there. If you fly, you might get 2 days, right? The Navy will buy your plane ticket, but then you're expected to check into your new command 2 days later. If you drive, you're going to get, I think it was about 9 days. But you're also going to make more money by driving and by moving yourself. Again, I won't get into those details on this podcast, but even if you're going to buy a plane ticket and fly, just tell the Navy you're going to drive. And then you can buy your plane ticket with the money that you are given from the Navy, and you'll have some left over. So I graduated OCS, and look, I am all about road trips. I love going new places. I love exploring. But I didn't do that. In hindsight, it might seem a little crazy to me now, right, to not to have just driven my car out there. It would have taken a week or less. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. It would have been a fun trip. But I chose to have my car shipped across the country, and then I flew out there to San Diego. And the reason I did that is because I had a complete one-track mind at the time. Right, the only thing I was thinking about was passing buds. All I wanted to do was make it through buds. I didn't care about sightseeing. I didn't care about going on a road trip. In fact, I didn't want to be in the car for 5 days if it meant that I wasn't going to be able to get good workouts in or get good sleep or get good nutrition. Right, the only thing I cared about was passing buds. I didn't give a shit about, having fun, what I was going to see along the way. So I chose to have my car shipped out to San Diego, and then I flew out there. Again, looking back on it, it's easy for me to think now, it wouldn't have been a big deal. You could have had a cool 1-week trip out there and still been fine. But it's, who knows? I definitely think that it's important to have that one-track mind, essentially. If when you're going into buds, that has to be the most important thing in the world to you and really the only thing in the world to you. Because if it's not, if you have other options, if there's other things that you're thinking about, you're interested in, there's a good chance you're not going to make it through buds. You need a certain level of obsession when you go there. So the process of shipping your car across country, only time in my life I've ever done that, it's a very sketchy process. Surprisingly, I don't know if it's changed in the past 10 years, but very, very weird process. Basically, you go to a website and you put in your contact information. There's no central site like you can go to, like Google Flights or even like AmericanAirlines.com, Delta, where you can just look at rates of competing car carrier services. Right? I remember you put in your contact information in a site, and then you start getting calls and voicemails nonstop for the next several weeks. All these different companies and individuals and strange people are calling your phone, leaving your voicemails, offering their services to drive your car out there. Because there really weren't companies that did this. It was just people with car carriers that would load up in certain locations. So it was very hard to figure out who you wanted to use and make sure somebody wasn't going to either A, take off with your car, or B, just take a very long detour and be there 3 weeks later than expected, because there's no way to hold these people accountable. So I don't have any great advice for that process other than look up reviews wherever you can find them, because it's a really shady market. Luckily, it ended up working out well for me. I loaded my car up from New Jersey, which is, again, where I grew up, and shipped it out to San Diego. It was the car was there in almost 24 hours. It was kind of remarkable. The guy, I don't know what the guy was on, but he drove nonstop, and the car was there like several days before I needed it to be. So I flew out to San Diego, rented an apartment in Imperial Beach with 3 other guys that I had met in OCS. Now, if you're enlisted, you're just going to be living in the barracks. And look, all throughout first phase of BUDS, I was living in the barracks too, right? You're not allowed to live off base while you're in first phase, but it is really nice to have a place off base after that, just so you can get off of the compound, get off base, and get away from the instructor staff and, get a mental break from the Navy on the weekends. If you are eligible to have a place off base, whether you're an officer or you're a married enlisted guy, your prior service, and you're a lateral transfer to BUDS, whatever the case is, my only recommendation is make sure it's a short commute, right? Imperial Beach was great. Our place was right at the bottom of the Silver Strand, which is that long, thin peninsula that connects Imperial Beach to Coronado Island. So you would wake up in the morning, hop on the Strand, and you were on base in 10 minutes or less. The last thing you want to be doing in BUDS is having a 30-minute commute each way, right? Even if that extra 40 minutes is just sleep time, 40 minutes of sleep in BUDS is something you would pay a lot of money for. So don't go get a place up in Pacific Beach or some party town, right, that you think would be a cool place to live. When you're in BUDS, everything that you do is with the intent of passing BUDS in mind. Everything that you eat, the place that you stay, what you do on the weekends, it's a one-track mind. The only thing you're thinking about is passing BUDS. So as an officer, when I go to check in, I went and checked into PTRR. And if you've never heard of PTRR, it stands for Physical Therapy, Rest, and Rehabilitation. So rehab. PTRR is a holding pen, essentially, for people that are waiting to start BUDS. So a lot of the people in PTRR, as the name suggests, got injured and were rolled from other BUDS classes. So if you get rolled, you go to PTRR. This is the holding pen where you're training, you're rehabbing, you're getting healthy, and you're preparing to start with another BUDS class. If you're enlisted, when you leave Great Lakes and you come to San Diego, you're not going to go into PTRR because your class is the next BUDS class, right? The timelines are built around you. So as an enlisted guy, you're only going to be in PTRR if you start BUDS and then you get rolled down the line. As an officer, because you're on different timelines coming out of OCS, coming out of the Naval Academy, wherever you're coming from, you're waiting for the enlisted class to get there so you can start BUDS with them. So when you first get there, you just check into PTRR and you wait for a class to show up. While you're in PTRR, it's really a very miniature version of BUDS, but the intention is to prepare you for BUDS. So it's not easy, but it's not. The purpose of PTRR is certainly not to make people quit, right? You're practicing evolutions, you're practicing things in the pool, you're practicing obstacles on the O course. You have a little schedule where you'll still do 4-mile time runs, you'll do ocean swims, you'll do a lot of the main evolutions of BUDS, but again, the focus is not to make you quit. The focus is to get you ready, to get you healthy and prepared to succeed in a BUDS class. People in PTRR stay in what's called open bay. Open bay is just barracks on the dry side in Coronado. So on the base there is split into what they call the wet side and the dry side. The wet side, as the name implies, is on the beach. That's where that's where the majority of your buds training occurs. That is so on the Pacific Ocean side. If you're talking about the Silver Strand is the road that I mentioned earlier that runs from Imperial Beach up to Coronado. So everything west of the Silver Strand is the wet side, and everything east of the Silver Strand is called the dry side. And it's not like it's inland. It's actually a peninsula, but it juts into the San Diego Bay rather than west to the Pacific Ocean. So on the dry side is where Open Bay Barracks is, which is where you stay in PTRR. It's also where the class stays during basic orientation when they arrive from Great Lakes. The CTT, or the Combat Training Tank, is the pool where you do all BUDS evolutions in. It's where you do your underwater swims, underwater knot tying, your treading water. It's the only pool that you use at BUDS. It's also where you dive in second phase before you start diving in the bay and in the ocean. And above, there's a building at the CTT, Combat Training Tank, and the second floor of the CTT building is where there's instructor offices and where the instructors for PTRR and BO will be, BO being basic orientation. So as an officer on day one, that's where I checked in. Had to put on your summer whites, dress uniform, and then go up to those offices and check in with the instructor staff and expect to be fucked with. But have everything squared away, have your uniform looking good, and, go up there and hope for the best. That's all you can do. PTRR was super helpful for me to physically get back into shape because you get acclimatized to running on sand, which is very different. And also in the 12 weeks at OCS, you get very out of shape compared to what shape you went in there in. And when the enlisted class comes out, they've just been doing BUDS prep for the last however many weeks. So PTR is a good time to get your fitness back. So our class eventually came out. I was class 308, and we started basic orientation. Basic orientation is 3 weeks, and like PTRR, but more intense, it is a on-ramp program to get you ready for BUDS. So you're doing many of the same things you're going to be doing in BUDS. You're going to be PTing, you're going to be doing 4-mile runs, you're going to be doing the O course, going to be doing some swimming, but certainly not the same intensity as BUDS. It's not to say that people don't quit in BO, but if you're quitting in basic orientation, it's someone that really had no business ever showing up in the first place. It's really not that. If you're at all prepared for BUDS, basic orientation is not difficult. At least certainly not difficult enough to make you think about quitting. When you first get out to BUDS, whether you're in basic orientation or if you're an officer or someone who checked in to PTRR, you're going to be doing a lot of stenciling, a lot of gear prep. So all of your white T-shirts are going to have your name stenciled on them, and pretty much every piece of equipment you get issued, which is, don't get too excited, it's nothing high speed. It's a web belt, an Nalgene bottle, a knife, your swimming fins. All of these things are going to need your name stenciled on them. So you'll get a stencil from supply, and you'll get whiteout markers or white paint markers for the black objects and black paint markers for the white objects. And you're going to be spending a lot of your time stenciling, unfortunately. It's a tedious, time-intensive thing, but it's just something that needs to be done. So right when you get there, you're going to be stenciling all your stuff. You're going to be getting your inspection uniforms ready, which means burning off all the IPs or Irish pennants, basically loose strings that are on your uniform. You can't have any loose threads, right, sticking out on the outside of the uniform, also inside of pockets. They'll turn your pockets inside out, make sure you have no threads there. So you'll go around with a lighter, or a lot more efficient, a little torch, and burn all of those strings off so that none are fraying. That's another tedious, time-consuming task. You'll polish your boots. You'll be polishing those. You'll probably get a heat gun, which helps for that. It melts the polish on there. It really melts it into the pores, opens up the pores of the boot, and lets the polish get deep in there. very helpful. Heat gun is also super helpful for removing there's a piece in the heel of your baits boots that when you get them stock as they are, there's a hard, I think it's a cardboard piece back on your Achilles that will chafe and gives a lot of guys blisters when they run in those boots. So it's very common to use a heat gun on that back part, which melts the glue inside the boot, and then they pull out that back cardboard piece. You're going to learn, I've mentioned a couple different things, right? Like a butane torch for IPs and a heat gun and all these things. There's a real buds prep culture when you get out to San Diego. If you're going to go to Home Depot to get, another thing is, say, a wire brush to clean your actuators and to clean the rust off some of your things that are going to get rusty naturally when you take them in salt water. There's certain stores actually sell buds kits. There's a hardware store, I think it's Ace Hardware, on Orange Ave, the main street in Coronado. And they'll sell a buds kit when you walk in there. And every 8 weeks, they have a new class of kids coming in from Great Lakes, and everybody needs the same supplies. So if you go to Home Depot and you're buying a heat gun, a wire brush, a butane torch, they're going to... I remember checking out at Home Depot, and the woman at the cash register smiled and said, "Good luck." So they get this all the time. They know exactly what's going on. So you're going to buy a little toolbox of some sort and keep all of your necessary gear prep materials in there that you'll have in your locker with you throughout buds. Paint pens, rulers, hammer, all different things that you're going to need that I'm not thinking of right now. Actually, one piece of gear that comes to mind, you have to sharpen your knife throughout buds, of course. And I was on quarterdeck watch one day. One of the instructors came through. It was late. It was probably 11 p.m. And an instructor came through the quarterdeck. I was sharpening my knife. I don't know what I was using at first. And this guy was in a good mood, I guess. He was giving me some advice. He said, "Get a Lansky, Lansky." He said, everybody wants to be cool with their whetstones, their knife sharpening stones going back and forth. He goes, but nobody knows how to use those things. You have to be a serious knife expert to be able to use a whetstone properly and get a good edge. So what a Lansky is this knife sharpening system that clamps your knife on the non-blade side, and it puts it at an exact angle for you to scrape whetstones against it. So essentially, it's the same as a knife sharpening stone, but it locks in the angle that the stone is hitting the blade at. So I ordered one of these things. It was probably $20. They're not that expensive. They have all different, versions of the Lanskys, but even the most basic one will do. And it worked like a charm. I had the sharpest knife in the fleet. I am telling you, the sharpest knife in all the Navy while I was in buds. This thing crushed it, absolutely crushed it. So I would highly recommend getting a Lansky, because having a sharp knife is, one, the instructors like it, and two, it's just fun. I like knives. It's a point of pride. It's fun. If you can't shave the hair off your arm with your knife is not sharp. It should absolutely be able to shave hair, and that's a test that a lot of instructors will use. But I digress. The point of this is when you first get to buds and you check in there, you're going to be doing a lot of gear prep. You're going to be staying up late, stenciling shirts, stenciling gear, sharpening knives, getting your inspection uniforms ready. Last point I'll make on that is, I don't even need to tell you this. Everybody's going to know this when you get to buds, but AB Brights is the name of the dry cleaner in Imperial Beach, right next to where I lived, actually, at the bottom of the Silver Strand. That's where you're going to take your uniforms to get them prepped to be your dress uniforms. They probably make their living off of bud students. They have dress uniforms cranking through there nonstop. So AB Brights, remember that. So your class is out there. You guys check in the bow. You're ready to go, right? You start doing all of these evolutions. You start doing mini first phase evolutions, and each week will progress a little bit, right? Week 1 will be the easiest, then 2, then 3. You guys will get a little bit of a taste of boats and logs, which I'll talk about more in a minute. And you're getting ready to go. You're getting your lay of the land. You're figuring out where to go on the wet side, the dry side, where all the facilities are. And they're prepping you for day 1 of first phase. Now, I know it's very easy to look back on things in the past, to look back with hindsight and think that things were much easier than they were because things ultimately worked out for you, right? I'm very guilty of that. things that were incredibly difficult and intense for me at the time, I look back on years later and think, whatever, that wasn't that big of a deal. So I have 2 emails that I sent out to my college lacrosse team while I was at Buds, just giving them updates. One was at the end of basic orientation, right before we started first phase, and the second was at the end of the first 3 weeks of first phase, right before starting Hell Week. So I'm just going to read both of those to you guys because I feel like that will be a more accurate depiction of how I was feeling at the time than me talking about it now and kind of downplaying things. So here's email number 1. This was sent on July 5th. Hey, how's everybody doing? Some of you guys I keep in contact with more so than others, and I know I've got to do a better job of making an effort there and staying in touch. Anyway, most of you know I'm out in San Diego now for the Navy. Our class just finished our 3-week basic orientation period, which is teaching you all the evolutions and ramping things up gradually, so the transition to first phase is a little less brutal. First phase is the shitty part that you usually see on TV or whatever documentaries there are on Buds, where you basically get kicked in the nuts, and it's the phase where the large majority of the weeding out happens. The real shitty part is really only the first 4 weeks. 3 weeks and then Hell Week, which goes from Sunday night, July 27th, to Friday, August 1st. I thought I'd write this quick email to fill you in since the days here are pretty long and I don't have as much time to talk as I'd like. Especially with the 3-hour time difference, by the time we're done for the day, it's usually too late there. There are some really solid guys here, as well as a few shitbags who will go away during Buds. I really hope all goes well so I can join the first group in a couple weeks. I still think about you guys a lot, and I could definitely use some of you under the boat or log with me. It would go a really long way to hear from you guys over the next 3 weeks. Even last week turned into a bit of a dick dragger, and that was still orientation. So I'm anxious to see what this week holds, to say the least. Seeing a few texts from you guys when I get back to my room at the end of the day would be pretty awesome. I'll do my best to respond, or if I actually get a bunch of them, maybe I'll just send out an email at the end of the week to fill you in, assuming I make it. That's about it. I hope everybody's doing well and enjoying the summer. Aside from the immediate future, San Diego is awesome. I'm excited for some time down the line when I'll have time to actually enjoy it. Talk to you soon. So I guess that was my mindset at the end of orientation. 3rd week of orientation got shitty. I remember we did a land portage or boats on heads, which was absolutely nothing compared to what we would do a week later, but was still pretty uncomfortable, pretty hard. And I will say on a side note, maybe this doesn't work for everybody. Maybe people are motivated by different things, but I was extremely motivated by my teammates, right? I hadn't made teammates in the Navy yet at this point, so I was still close in touch with my athletic teammates from college. But I had really always been like that growing up. If I told people that I cared about, my good friends, that I was going to do something, I was never going to let them down, right? So in a sense, that's one of the reasons why I knew I was not going to quit Buds when I got there. Whenever things got hard, I would just think about my friends, essentially, my friends, family, and it was a no-brainer. That was never an option to me. I was not going to let those people down. So if that sounds similar to you, I would highly recommend as a strategy, just like I did in that email, I asked my buddies, hey, if you guys could send me some texts during the next couple of weeks, I would really appreciate it. And it made a huge difference, just letting people, and you don't have to ask them to send texts, right? If they're good friends, if you just make sure that they know that you're starting Buds and you're going through it, they're going to do it on their own. But it's so helpful when you come back from a long day and you have a message from one of your boys just saying that they know you can do it or to keep going or whatever it is. I mean, that's pretty motivating, and it's certainly going to get me through the next day. So we make it through Bow, and we're ready to start first phase. So first day of first phase always starts off, I think it's 4 a.m. with grinder PT. So you're going to be wet, sandy. You're going to be full of the hoo-yah spirit, right? You're going to be all juiced up. Your class is going to be yelling and screaming, and you're going to get hammered. That's how it goes. So you're going to be out on the grinder, lined up on your little duck feet markings, and you're going to be doing push-ups, sit-ups, flutter kicks, 8-count bodybuilders, squats, etc. with some Adonis, Greek god of an instructor that's just been training for weeks for this one day. and he's going to crush you. But that's part of it. You're going to smile a little bit from time to time because you're in it. After all the months and maybe years of preparation of wanting to be in this spot, like you are wet and sandy, you're getting your dick beat on the grinder, and like you are at Buds, right? So remember that, right? And smile inside a little bit. Now, my first week at Buds was hard, man. And look, I'm not the only hard class that went through Buds. Everyone's first week at Buds is hard. But I remember getting very little sleep. I remember getting about 2.5 hours of sleep per night, maybe more. Maybe it was more like 4 hours of sleep. I'm exaggerating in hindsight, but it was very little sleep, very long days. We were woken up a couple of times at night by instructors and called out in the middle of the night and, beaten next to our barracks. And we lost a lot of guys that first week. Now, just going to go through a couple of the evolutions, right, that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. But every week during first phase, you're going to do your major timed evolution. So once a week, you're going to do a 4-mile timed run. You're going to do an obstacle course for time, and you're going to do a 2-mile ocean swim for time. Those are the standardized timed evolutions at Buds that you have to pass every week. And there are time standards for those in first phase, in second phase, and in third phase. The standards get a little bit faster as you progress through Buds. And if some of the times, say the 4-mile time run time, for example, seems not that hard, remember that one, it's in boots and pants, and it's on sand. And most importantly, you're not going to be fresh for this event, right? If you say, hey, I can run a 26-minute 4-mile. First off, that's awesome. But if that's your best time now, running while you're relatively fresh in shorts and sneakers, you're certainly not going to run that in boots and pants on the sand. And more importantly, you're not going to run that in Buds because you're going to be beat to shit from everything else you're doing, right? You're not getting a lot of sleep. You're going to be very sore and very tired from the other events of the week and the previous week and the week before that. So you're not going to be at 100%. Now, outside of those major timed evolutions, there are conditioning runs, and how conditioning runs work is there's just an instructor. He's obviously going to be one of the faster running instructors. We'll go out for a run, and you keep up with him, and it's that simple. You don't know how long it's going to be. It's not for time. It's basically a pass-fail evolution, where if you keep up with the instructor, you're good to go, and that's going to be challenging, right? He's going to be a fast runner. If you don't keep up with the instructor, then you're in the goon squad, and you're getting beaten for quite a while. There's also ruck runs at Buds. Probably only once a week you'll do a ruck run. But ruck runs are very important evolutions. A ruck run is a big-time evolution at Buds because instructors are big about being able to carry your own weight. And so the consequences for performing poorly on a ruck run might be worse than not performing as well on a conditioning run. So they usually always make a big deal out of ruck runs. I think the first week of Buds, we did a ruck run called 7 Layers of Hell. Dramatic title, right? And how this works, it's essentially the exact same thing as a conditioning run. Instructor runs in the front, and then you all are running with rucks on, trying to keep up. So when the instructor gets to the end of the run, wherever that is, you're not going to know where the finish line is. They stop everyone right where they are, whether you're with the instructor or you're a mile behind them. And then they divided where everyone was into 7 different groups. So if you kept up completely with the instructor, you were good to go. If you were, say, 50 yards behind him, you were in level 1. And the farther back you were, the higher level of hell you were in. All right, so if you were level 7 is absolutely the worst place you could go. And each level had different exercises they were going to do. So level 1 might just be a sprint to the berm and back, right? Relatively simple. And if you won your sprint to the berm and back in level 1, then you graduated and you were done. If you were in level 2, you might bear crawl to the berm and back. And if you won from your group in group 2, you would move up to level 1. And then if you won level 1, you'd be done, etc. If you were in level 7, that might be doing buddy bear crawls or something where you're bear crawling with your buddy draped across you, essentially holding onto your neck, and you're dragging him while you're bear crawling, right? It's going to be something very difficult, and it's also a race where you have to win your group just to move into level 6 of hell, which is then still something very shitty. Maybe buddy carries races. So if you're far back there, you're essentially fucked. I was in either level 1 or level 2 for this, but made it. It was hard, but made it out. If you're really in the back, you're going to be hurting for a long time. So the point of the story here is respect ruck runs, train for them, run with some weight. Not all the time, because you don't want overuse injuries, you don't want stress fractures, but you definitely want to get the feeling of running with weight, because it's something very important at buds in terms of ruck runs and in terms of land portage or running with boats on heads. Again, I'll get to boats on heads and log PT in a minute, saving the best for last. I'll briefly touch on the pool exercises at buds, because when you're watching buds documentaries, when you're prepping to come to buds, you always see drown proofing, right? You always see a lot of the underwater things, and they're kind of the sexy evolutions to put on TV, because you have your hands and your feet tied together underwater. It looks scary, right? It looks like this crazy Navy SEAL training. I will say that pretty much anything you do in the CTT, in the combat training tank, is not very hard. It's usually a relief. If you're in first phase and you go to the pool, it's usually a big relief and a break. Because number one, you're not running, you're not doing anything that physical, right? You're in the pool, which is warm. It's a warm water pool, so you're not cold. You're not really getting yelled at by the instructors while you're in the water. I mean, they're trying, but they can't really do anything to you while you're in the pool. So some of the exercises in the pool are certainly challenging, but overall it is a relief, and while you're in first phase, you are going to be very happy anytime that you are over in the warm pool on the dry side. And if you're not that comfortable in the water, or even if you are, there's some things that may sound intimidating. So I'm gonna touch on the 50-meter underwater swim right now, because I was certainly nervous about that, and I think a lot of people are. But it's such a unique experience. I feel like I've got to mention it here. So 50-meter underwater swim is you jump in off the side of the pool and you do a somersault underwater, and then you begin swimming without touching the wall. So jump in, somersault, and just paddle. You cannot push off the wall. You go down 25 meters, touch the wall, turn around, and then swim back. Now, this sounded like a pretty daunting task to me. I can swim 25 meters underwater in a pool, no problem, right? I think I could, while I was training, I think I could even swim 50 it was hard, but I could do it. But that was pushing off the wall both ways and not jumping in doing the somersault, which definitely makes a difference. The push off makes a huge difference, and the somersault even makes a difference because, as you know, if you go upside down in a pool, it's pretty easy to get water up your nose. So you have to be exhaling a little bit that whole time, breathing out of your nose while you're doing the somersault. Because if you jump in and just get water up your nose, then that's the end of your swim, right? You're fucked. So you're wasting some of your oxygen on that right off the bat. But I'm going to tell you my experience with the 50-meter underwater, and it's so bizarre, but I swear this was the experience of when I would ask other people in my class. This was almost everyone had the exact same experience, and it was actually a very interesting just learning point in life and about being underwater, about the thought of drowning in general. So here it is. So, and also one other note on pool exercises. Everything that you do in the pool, whether it's drown proofing, whether it's a 50-meter underwater, whether it's underwater knot tying, you are going to build up to first. You don't get to buds and just do these exercises. So before you do, say if you do the 50-meter underwater swim on week 3, on week 1, you're going to go there and do a 25-meter underwater. And then on week 2, you're going to go there and do a 35-meter underwater. So everything is a crawl, walk, run progression where you build up to eventually taking these tests. It's the same thing for drown proofing. Before you go in there and take the drown proofing tests with your hands and feet tied and have to do all the different segments of it in one, you'll go in with just you'll keep your feet together and your hands behind your back, but they're not going to be tied, right? It's just going to be an honor system, like hey, keep your hands behind your back. But if you need to, if you freak out and you feel like you're going to drown, then just pull them out and swim. And then you might do it with just your feet tied, but you have your hands, or just your hands tied and you have your feet. So all of the pool exercises you will gradually build up to. So I don't want anyone to be sitting at home thinking, I have to be able to do this 50-meter underwater swim or even more than that by myself right now before I go to buds, or same thing with drown proofing, right? Everything you will gradually build up to while at buds. Enough said on that. So the 50-meter underwater, I remember during one of our build-up sessions, the week before the actual test, we did a 25-meter swim. So you stood at the edge of the pool, jumped in, did your forward somersault, and then just swam one length down, touched the wall, and came up. So that was only half the distance of the 50, obviously. And I remember as soon as I finished my somersault and I was swimming, I was thinking of how incredibly hard it was going to be to make it to the wall. And I was really panicking by the time I made it to the wall, right? I was completely out of breath when I touched the other wall and I came up. And obviously I succeeded at that 25-meter, but I was just thinking in my head, I just barely made that. There is no way I'm going to be able to go twice that distance. Like, I am screwed for this evolution. And the next week when we did the 50-meter, I had that same feeling essentially on the way down. I jumped in, did my somersault, was going down, and I was thinking, wow, I might not even make it to the first wall of 25 meters. But I made it to the 25-meter wall, feeling just like I did the first time. I was completely out of breath. I touched the wall. I just forced myself, okay, I'm going to turn around and push off. And I turned around and pushed off and started coming back. And as soon as I had pushed off the opposite wall, I no longer had that panicking feeling. I didn't feel like I needed to breathe anymore. I don't know how to describe it. I have no explanation for it other than I no longer felt like I was out of breath. Literally, I don't mean like, okay, now I'm on the way back. This is a mental thing. The physical feeling of pent up carbon dioxide just went away, and I was okay. So I was comfortable swimming on the way back, and it was so bizarre. Like, once I passed this certain threshold, my body adapted to it. And as I was continuing to swim towards the final wall, definitely got a little bit of a euphoric sensation, right, where the outer edges, you get a little bit of that tunnel vision, where kind of the outer edges of your peripheral vision begin to cloud over or gray out, and your vision narrows. So probably from lack of oxygen, right? That's what happens when they take your oxygen away. You get kind of euphoric and tingly and like you're going to sleep. So in some sense, it may be that I was on my way. I'm sure I was on my way towards a shallow water blackout, but that didn't happen. I was fine. I reached the wall and I came up and I passed. So that was a really cool experience for me. It actually totally changed my perspective on drowning. I think before that, as many people do, I thought drowning is one of the worst ways to go and would be absolutely horrible. And that experience really changed my perspective on it. I think if you weren't freaking out, if you were trying to stay calm like that, it might actually be very peaceful. But that's not important. What is important is my mindset going into that test, because I think this is the only thing that allows you to really succeed at it. So my mindset going in was, because the 25-meter had been so difficult for me, I was not confident at all that I was going to pass the 50. But here's the thing. When you're at buds, if you're doing an underwater swim like this, if you pass out underwater and the instructors have to save you, it's okay, right? You didn't pass the evolution. You're going to have to do it again in the future, but the instructors and all of your classmates respect you, and you're going to get another shot at it, because at least you're mentally tough as shit because you stayed down until you passed out. And physically, nothing's going to happen to you. All the instructors are there watching, and they're going to jump in and pull you out, no problem. So don't be afraid of that. If, however, you come up voluntarily without passing, say if I go 35 meters underwater and then I just surface because I felt like I was out of breath, you will be laughed out of buds, right? Maybe not literally. You might not have to quit right there, but the instructors are going to shit on you, and it's going to be very difficult from then forward. It's going to be very, very difficult for you because the instructors are going to make it difficult for you because they don't respect you. So my whole mindset during this swim was I was just trying to pass out, right? Maybe not literally trying to pass out, but I expected to pass out, right? So all I was telling myself before the swim and the whole time I was doing it was just stay down here until you pass out. Just stay down here until you pass out. So that was the mentality I had. And when you have that mentality, luckily I just kept going and never did pass out and was fine and passed the test. But I think that's what enabled me to get past that wall of that carbon dioxide, I can't breathe feeling. And I was like, okay, I'm fine with this. I can't breathe, but I'm staying down here until I pass out. The instructors are going to save me. And then my body passed through to the other side, and it didn't bother me anymore. So that's just, and again, many, many other people in my class I have spoken about this underwater swim to, and they had identical experiences. So really interesting phenomenon, and I tell you that just so that you're not worried at home about, oh, these people are superhuman. There's no way I can do this. Trust me, I felt the same way. You'll be okay. This is one of those rare occasions. Usually the saying "rise to the occasion" is bullshit, but this is kind of one scenario where it is where it actually plays out in the real world, and you'll be okay when you have to take the test, as long as you want it badly enough and you're prepared to pass out down there. Now we get to the meat and potatoes of BUDS, the main event. And the main events of BUDS are boats and logs. For me, the main event was boats. That was my kryptonite. I didn't really care about logs that much. Boats is boats on heads or land portage. So you have this inflatable whitewater rafting style boat. You'll have either 6 or 7 men in your boat crew, and you pick up the boat, put it on your heads, and run with it down the beach. Logs is log PT. So you have a round telephone pole essentially, and again you'll have 6 or 7 members of your boat crew on the log, and you'll do all sorts of different PT exercises with the log. You'll do shoulder overhead presses. You do a lot of lunges where you hold the log on your chest at a chest carry. You do alternating lunges. Also at that you'll just carry the log at that chest carry and walk with it. So you'll have races around the obstacle course. If you win, you'll be secured. If you lose, you'll just keep doing races. And then later on in Hell Week, you'll have log lib or log liberation, which is the last event you ever do with logs, assuming you complete it. And it is a roughly 1.5 mile walk with that log at a chest carry down to the demo pits. And to give you an idea of what walking with a log looks like, it's too heavy. Nobody has big enough biceps, right, where you're just going to isometrically hold this log locked to your chest while you walk with it, because you can't curl a telephone pole for that long, right? So when you're walking with a log, what it looks like is you start with it at your chest. In about 3 seconds, the log will slowly fall down to your hips, and then somebody on the log, usually the boat crew leader, will say 1, 2, 3, up, and everybody curls the log up to your chest. And about 3 or 4 seconds later, it falls back down to your waist. So essentially, you're and then somebody says 1, 2, 3, up again. So you're basically doing curls with a telephone pole as you try to walk with it. But you really can't walk with it at your hips, so that's the only way to do it. So again, boats and logs are the 2 main event evolutions of BUDS. And they're the 2 toughest evolutions, and they're the 2 most teamwork-oriented evolutions. Maybe besides surf passage, which is when you go out into the ocean in your boats. But that's not necessarily a difficult evolution. It's just a teamwork-oriented one. So the instructors really care about boats and logs because it's about carrying your share of the weight, and you can either take more weight and take strain away from your teammates, or you can let your teammates take and carry your weight for you, which is a very bad thing to do. For example, the absolute worst name you can be called at buds is a boat ducker. And what that means is when you run with these boats on your heads, if you're ducking, that means I'm not carrying my portion of the weight. And not only am I not carrying my weight, that means that the weight I'm supposed to be carrying is now getting distributed over all my teammates' heads. So I'm ducking out and making my teammates do the work for me. So boat ducker is if you get pegged as a boat ducker at buds by many people in your class, then your days are numbered. You're not going to be around for very long. Same thing on a log. In general, it's said that it is harder to be at the end of a log and you carry more weight at the end of a log. To be honest, I heard that, so I would always go to the end of the log, and sometimes you're just put into different positions. You're doing different things. And honestly, I really didn't find it any more difficult being at the end of the log versus being in the middle of the log. Maybe it's just if you want to hide out, you can hide out in the middle of the log more easily. And if you aren't putting an effort at the end of the log, your end of the log sags. But again, I didn't find much of a difference. So I was like, what the hell? I'm always going to be on the end of the log. I was looking to put in and do more of the work anyway, and this doesn't feel any harder. So if I'm getting credit for being here, then great. What the hell? But again, log PT is hard. It's absolutely very hard. I don't want to confuse anyone. A lot of things at buds are very hard that I might just gloss over, but that's because land portage was basically impossible. Right? There's a difference between when you go to buds, you expect everything to be very hard. But when something is essentially the hardest thing you've ever done in your life and puts you into a state of unconsciousness, then that's what I focus on. That's what I would consider to be very hard at buds. Right? All the rest of the stuff is very hard in everyday life, but that's what you expect at buds. So whatever. So yeah, log PT was challenging, but I kind of enjoyed it because it was not nearly the stress that land portage was on me, and I felt like other people found it harder than I did. So it was a point for me to, it was an evolution where I could help my team out and perform well, and we could succeed as a boat crew together, and it was fun for us because I had an exceptionally talented boat crew where I think 6 of our 7 members in the first week of buds graduated buds or at least made it through third phase. Somebody was dropped later on, but we started basic orientation with 165 people and we finished Hell Week with 28. So to have 6 or 7 of the 28 in your original boat crew in a group of 165 is the probability of that is tiny. So we really had a remarkable boat crew right off the bat, and we would win almost everything. We would win every land portage, every log PT. We had a very fast, very tough boat. And for those of you who don't know, very popular saying at buds is it pays to be a winner. So you want to win all these evolutions because when you win, you still have to do the evolution in the first place, but you just do the evolution, and then when you win it, you're secured and you end early, essentially. And the rest of the boat crews keep going. They keep doing log races around the O course. They keep doing extra drag races after land portage. So by winning these events, you end up doing less overall work in the long term, and it's very appreciated at buds. So land portage. Land portage was my bear that I had to tackle at buds. It was by far the hardest thing that I did there or anywhere, really. So we did some land portage and basic orientation and got warmed up to it, and it was hard. And I mentioned earlier, the first week of buds was very hard. We got very little sleep. So we were really gassed, and you do land portage on Friday afternoon. So it is the last evolution of the whole week before the weekend. So the first week of buds, it's after lunchtime, Friday afternoon, We know we have land portage, but it's also almost the weekend. We're real tired, so we're thinking, how bad can this be, right? It's the last thing we have. We showed up there, and it seemed like, so if they typically have 5 to 10 instructors on staff for an evolution, it seemed like they had 40 or 50. You could tell they were pulling instructors out of the woodwork for this first land portage. They were all hopped up on monsters, and I've never seen, this is by far the most intense evolution that I remember from all of BUD/S. As soon as we started this evolution, there are these packs of instructors running alongside your boats, and they're getting in people's faces, maybe that they had pegged earlier in the week that they didn't like, that they thought were weak or shouldn't be there, and they're talking shit. They're grabbing people. They're putting them in the 2 spot, which in a boat, there's 3 spots, right? 6 or 7 total spots, but they're labeled the 1, the 2, and the 3. The 1 spot is the front of the boat, and there's one on the left, one on the right. There's 2 spots in the middle of the boat, left and right, and there's 2 3 spots in the rear of the boat, the left and the right. So if you have 6 people in your boat crew, you just have those 6 spots. If you have 7 people in your boat crew, the 7th person runs directly in the center of the boat. Now, the 2 spot is known to be the most difficult spot in the boat to run because it takes the most weight, because these boats are rubber and inflatable and they bend in the middle, right? Sometimes you have salt water in them. Sometimes you have a little sand in them, which all goes to the middle of the boat. And they just bend, and the middle is the lowest part of the boat. So when you're running in the 2 spot, you tend to be carrying the most weight of any other spot on the boat. The people in the 1 spot tend to push the pace of the boat. They control the speed that you're running at. And the 3 spot's the 3 spot. Don't have much to say about it. I would say I actually ended up, I always spent the most time in the 2 spot, and I'm not saying that because I thought I was tough or I was the best boat runner. I was not the best boat runner, but it was kind of awkward for me to be in the other spots. The 1 spot, I didn't like feeling like people were stepping on my heels and running up behind me. And the 3 spot, I felt like I had to lean forward to keep my head under the boat because I didn't want to step on the 2 man's feet, and I just felt like I was falling out the back of the boat. So I don't know. I guess when I first stepped into the 2 spot, I'm sure I was thinking I wanted to take the most weight. I wanted to be in the hardest spot and help out my team, thinking I'm a stud. And then once I actually started running, I was like, wow, this is fucking hard. I'm not that good at it. But for whatever reason, even though it was very hard, it felt a little more comfortable in some aspects of spacing and not stepping on other people's feet. Whatever. So and everybody has their own positions that they're good at in your boat crew. You'll figure it out depending on your personnel. And I was just in the 2 a lot of the time. So instructors are going crazy. They're running around. They're screaming right in people's faces while you're doing this. The pace is very fast down in the soft sand. Sometimes instructors are giving boosts, which sounds like a good thing. Not a good thing. So by giving a boost, they'll run up behind your boat, scream boost, and put their hands on the back of the boat and just push, sprint as fast as they can through the sand and push you forward. And it seems like a good idea, like, hey, they're helping us out, but really 9 times out of 10, it could be a good thing if the instructor means well and then give you a little bit of a push, which helps. But usually on this first day when they were doing that, it was because you could not run as fast as they were pushing your boat, and the boat would usually collapse, right? People would trip, fall, and the boat would explode, and people would all fall down in a heap in the sand. Or it was if there was just, say you had 7 people in your boat and there was 1 weak link, they would give you this boost, and the slow person wouldn't be able to keep up, and they'd be run out the back. So getting run out was the scariest thing for me at BUD/S. And what that means, so when I showed up to BUD/S, I would think, as many people say, all you have to do is not quit. And that was not the case when you got there. Because in land portage, which was by far the most difficult evolution, at least for me, if you couldn't keep up with your boat, you would quite literally just get run out, meaning the boat would keep going faster than you were running, and you would fall out the back of it. And when that happened, there was an instructor was always driving a pickup truck along the side of the trail. And they would pick you up in the back of the pickup truck and drive you over to the grinder where you would ring the bell and quit. So it wasn't a matter of, okay, I just don't want to run anymore. I'm electing to leave my boat. And don't get me wrong, a lot of people would do that. But for me, the fear was not, I'm going to voluntarily quit. It was just, my boat is so fast, the instructors are pushing the pace so fast, I'm not going to be able to keep up, and they're going to make me quit. And that was terrifying to me. I will never forget the feeling of that first land portage on the way down. So we run south down the beach to the demo pits, which is about 1.5 miles, and then back up. So roughly 3 miles in total. I'll never forget the feeling. We were running south, so still in the first half of this run. And the pace was so fast, and it's just chaotic. The instructors are screaming. The boat is bouncing on your head while you run, kind of hammering you. And running into the sun thinking, I cannot believe I am not going to be a Navy SEAL because of this evolution. I never even knew about boats on heads before coming to Buds. They never talk about it. You never see it in the documentaries. It's not on the TV shows. I didn't even know this is a thing. And I am not going to be a Navy SEAL because of this fucking evolution. I'm going to get run out of this boat. But I made it down to the demo pits, half alive, like barely there, starting to leave into my mind was starting to go into another dimension at that point, probably very overheated. And you take a break at the demo pits. I don't even remember what you do. Might have hit the surf and gotten wet, which would have been a godsend, to be honest, because your body is so overheated. That's all you want to do is get wet. And then came back to the boat and ran back. And on the way back, completely transcended into another dimension, right? The last half mile or so, my eyes were closed the whole time. I was just running with eyes closed, mouth open, and tongue hanging out is all I can remember. I don't know how I didn't get pulled out or run out of that boat, but somehow I didn't. Made it back to the obstacle course, just standing there like an absolute Looney Tune, barely knowing where I was, eyes 95% closed still, waiting till we hit the surf. And you usually always get surf tortured right after these evolutions, but it's the best thing in the world, right? Because you're so overheated at that point. They're just trying to. It's not actually surf torture. You go and do it. They call it surf torture, but it's really a safety thing because your bodies are so overheated. You're trying to cool your core body temperature down. So, that was the event for me, right? That I will never forget that first Friday land portage. That was a absolutely sacred, life-altering, come-to-Jesus moment. But I will say, as absolutely, amazingly difficult as that was the hardest moment of me for all of Buds. So we still did land portage the second week Friday and the third week Friday, and then you carry boats for the entirety of Hell Week, really. But I never came close, or may have came close, but certainly never reached or surpassed the first Friday land portage of Buds. That was number one, hands down, hardest moment of Buds for me. And now to wrap things up here, I'm going to read you that second email that I wrote to my teammates, my college teammates, while I was in Buds. So I wrote this on July 26th. This was the weekend going into Hell Week. Here it is. So I made it through the first 3 weeks. Thanks a lot to everyone who's reached out. I got a ton of messages from you guys, and it means a lot. The first 3 weeks were interesting and pretty shitty most of the time. There are definitely a few fun moments, but it sucks a lot of the time. We started out with 165 guys in bow. About 145 made it to first phase, and now we have 63 to start Hell Week. History says we'll lose about another 30. A few guys get hurt, then some of them meet the standards and are dropped by failing timed runs, swims, O courses, etc. And some just don't want it badly enough. I didn't really understand that until I came here, but it truly has to be the only thing you want. It's not like in the past where you wake up and go work out, then you go eat, you do whatever, maybe you work out again, but then you go home and you do what you need to do for the rest of the day. It is your life 24/7 right now, so there are no mental breaks during the week. You are completely immersed in it all day. You take a short nap at night, and you wake up and continue doing it all the next day. By far the scariest way that guys go away is called a nonverbal DOR. A DOR, drop on request, is what it's normally called when someone rings the bell and quits. Before coming here, a lot of people would say all you have to do is not quit. But that's bullshit. Buds doesn't work like that. Our class proctor had us write down a quote and hang it in our lockers, which is extremely true and describes it well. Buds is not about survival. Buds is about performance. Your performance will ensure your survival. If you're not as strong as they'd like, or you screw something up and they think you're a shitbag for some reason, the instructors will make you go away one way or another. By far, the worst thing we did during first phase was land portage, where your group of 6 or 7 guys runs with your boat on your heads. Other people hate log PT, but I'm definitely stronger at that coming from a lifting background. Boats on heads is the worst thing I've ever done. During first phase, we did 1 land portage a week, and they were 3 miles each. They were miserable. During Hell Week, you run something like 120 miles, 70 of which are with a boat on your head. So how I'm going to do that, I'm not quite sure. Which brings me back to the nonverbal DOR. That's what scares the shit out of me for Hell Week. I'm not worried I'm going to leave to go ring the bell on my own. That's not an issue. But just being pulled out during boats is what scares me. Our first land portage was Friday afternoon at the end of the first week. We had a night evolution Thursday night rock portage, and had to prepare for an inspection Friday morning, so you didn't really get any sleep. Plus, our class had just gotten hammered pretty badly the whole first week. According to the rollbacks in our class, that wasn't normal. It was actually because we had some idiots in our class and was as bad as Buds gets, according to the rollbacks. We were only getting 2.5 or 3 hours of sleep the other nights anyway. So by the time Friday got there, everyone was running on fumes. We knew we had land portage that afternoon, but figured we were so smoked, it really couldn't be that bad. It was a bloodbath. Every instructor on staff was there like a fucking pack of wolves. They were sprinting everywhere, screaming, grabbing guys that looked slow or they didn't want and putting them in the 2 spot, the middle position in the boat, which is the heaviest on your head. They were pushing boats from behind so the slowest guys fell out the back. Or literally fell, and then the whole boat trips on them and goes down in a tangled heap. Most of these guys that fall out are picked up in one of the pickup trucks following behind and quit. I was truly running into the blackness the last quarter mile or so. Honestly, I'm surprised I didn't get pulled out. I was hanging on for dear life. I've gotten better technique-wise since then, and I've learned more so how to run with the boat on your head. But there's still a certain speed that really fucks me when we go over it. So I can only pray I don't get run out during Hell Week. Aside from that, everything is just hard or sucks, but it's manageable, just like anything else you've ever done in your life that's really hard or really sucks. Hopefully all will be fine and I'll write to you guys next week. It's just nerve-wracking more so than anything I've done, since it will literally change the rest of my life either way. So I hope it works out. But again, thanks a lot to you guys that reached out. I hope I have a stupid-looking picture to send out next weekend. Basically, how tomorrow will work is that at 1300, we go into lockdown in a classroom for a couple hours. Movies will be playing, either something like Braveheart or Gladiator, or maybe Pitch Perfect if we go the less serious route. Then at some point, an instructor will come and tell us to gear up. We'll change into our camis and go out into this tent on the beach. The tent is dark and smells like death and despair. You sit or lie on these cots in anticipation, and sometime between 5 p.m. Sunday night and 5 a.m. Monday morning, artillery rounds will start going off. The instructors will start spraying blanks everywhere around the tent. And then it's on until next Friday. Thanks again. I'll talk to you soon. So we're going to leave it at that. Next weekend, we're going to pick up with the start of Hell Week. Thanks for listening. Keep training. Stay hard.